Hey guys, and welcome back to NTom and Volk's Spot of PC. Oh, we've got a big one for you today, y'all. This is Starcraft by Blizzard Entertainment. It was an RTS released in the glorious year of 1998. A pretty golden year for video games. You got stuff like Marvel vs. Capcom 1, Resident Evil 2, Final Fantasy Tactics, James Bond 007. You got Yoshi's Story, Starcraft, of course, Panzer Dragoon Saga, Unreal, Gran Turismo, etc, etc, Banjo, fucking Kazooie. Volk, you gotta take the reins before I read the whole list, mate. What does Starcraft mean to you?
Starcraft is the game that defined the RTS genre and really put it out there in the spotlight. Even though there were other games that came before it, this was the one that really got it out there and stuck it out for the world to see. It was one of the best-selling PC games of all time, as far as I'm aware. It sold nearly 10 million copies over the process of 10 years, so just over 1 million per year. You know, that's some pretty good scratch, if you ask me.
Jeez.
And it was a game that grew very rapidly in popularity across the world, but particularly in South Korea, where it established the pro-gaming scene with competitive games being televised and treated almost like any other sport, like your football or your basketball or whatever. And it is probably one of its best strategy games ever made, even to this day. So the basic story is that you've got your three warring factions. You've got the Terran, who are your standard human blokes who come in the varieties of either goody two-shoes or complete dickhead, as you might expect from humans in these sci-fi fictional worlds.
Of course, there is no in-between. You're either a good or a dickhead.
And you've got the Protoss, who are your advanced alien race who thinks every other race is beneath them. And they have all sorts of cool shit, like plasma blades and other cool shit, like carriers that fire out miniature ships that then just bombard the enemy. And then you got the Zerg, who are your typical alien race, I say in quotation marks, and they involve like your beasties, like your Zerglings and your Ultralisks and things like that. They range from the very small to the obscenely large, and they're very gross and very, very scary. I love them.
So the Protoss are your typical Mass Effect alien race, and like the fucking Zergs are a hive mind kind of entity.
Precisely. Hive-minded is pretty much the best way to describe it, so you hit the nail on the head for that one.
Okay.
To start with, we're going to give you a taste of RTS 101 here. This is what is known in the StarCraft world as a Zerg Rush, and is one of the oldest strategies ever devised in an RTS game, as far as I'm concerned.
Thought you were going to say ever, though. It's like Sun Tzu said, when taking an enemy battlefield, rush there with the power of the Zerg.
No, somebody may have gone back and rewritten the history book, and it's just Sun Tzu's book, and all it is one page that says, Zerg Rush, kick.
The Art of War. Zerg Rush, okay, makes sense. Yep,
that's all I need to hear. Alright, let's go!
Of course, you know, StarCraft is so ingrained in popular culture. I know Zerg Rush, I know we must create additional pylons, etc. But how does a Zerg Rush work exactly?
Alright, so I'll break it down for you. You start off by building a couple of drones, and they will help you get your mineral supplies going a little bit quicker. However, you don't want to build too many, because you'll want to start saving up for your spawning pool, which is how you get your first offensive units as the Zerg. So the idea is that you build a couple of drones just to get the economy rolling a bit more. Then you immediately build your spawning pool as soon as you can. Then you continue saving your minerals to build your first set of Zerglings, which will come in 6s. Well, they come in 2s, but you can build up to 6 because you can have free lava at any one time to transform into things. So then once you've got your 6 Zerglings, you run them down towards where you think the enemy base is. So luckily this is a 2-player map, so you can pretty much guess where they are, because they're just going to be on the other side of the map to you, essentially.
Yeah.
But on larger maps it can be a little bit trickier. And the idea is that you get your offense going before they can even have the chance to start finishing their barracks or whatever, and you kill off their entire economy before they have the chance to get going. It's one of those kind of strategies where if it goes well, you can basically win straight up right there and then. But if it goes poorly, you might be on the back foot for the rest of the game, although if you're good enough, you may be able to catch up. It's one of those strategies where I wouldn't say it's entirely all in, but you are laying all your cards save like maybe 1 or 2 on the table, certainly.
Yeah, you're basically attacking the enemy, all your trap cards have been activated, and then you're left with no monsters because you summoned them for some stupid reason.
Luckily, if the map's big enough, generally speaking, Zerglings are very, very quick on their feet, so if the enemy does decide to counterattack, you may have enough time to put up some defenses of your own or just build a few more Zerglings to meet with the counter-resistance, as it were.
What the hell is that?
That is an Overlord, and that is not only responsible for your army supply, which is obviously what you need in order to house your units to begin with. You can't build more than what your fleet supply allows. But also, it's mobile, so you can literally use it to ever so slowly float across the battlefield and scout things out. They can be upgraded to go faster, and you can give them transport capabilities as well, but at the beginning of the game, they're just basically floating balloons that make strange noises. But apart from fleet supply, you've also got, similar to how Warcraft works, you've got minerals, which are, for all intents and purposes, gold, and then you've got your Vespene gas, which is your advanced material, which is used for your more advanced units and also for your upgrades and such. But here we go, the Zerglings are going to attempt to munch on some economy of the enemy right here. So what you want to do in this case is you want to basically ignore everything and just go after as many probes as you possibly can. But in this case, they've just started building their own offense, which is this lone zealot here. But luckily we outnumber him, so taking care of that isn't too much of a problem.
Foolish other side of the battle. You were never expecting this cheap out tactic.
Yeah, this is the thing. Whilst the Zerglings, you do win out in numbers, they are individually very weak. Whereas with the Protoss, their units are generally quite strong in their own, because not only do they have health, but they also have shields that regenerate over time. So they're pretty damn beefy and can generally take on a few Zerglings by themselves before kicking the bucket themselves, but unfortunately they just couldn't get enough going at the same time to take care of my Zergling force, and it looks as if I'll be able to take care of the last of these pros without any problem. And at that point, the economy completely shuts down. He can't build any more units, maybe bar 1 or 2, but at that point the game is essentially over for you if you let it get to this point.
Yeah. Why does this side of the battle have 2 save thingamabobs from World of Final Fantasy?
You know what? I do not know.
Like that right there.
Yeah, I don't have an answer for you on that one, unfortunately.
Well, maybe I should ask less stupid questions then. Alright, what's next on the agenda, mate? Are we just, I don't know, picking up where we left off? Just picking off the last of the, I don't know why I keep saying the other side of the battle, it's the opposing force.
Yep. Pretty much this is just showing, yep, I am cleaning up the rest of the force. Usually if you're playing a game with multiple opponents, what you would then do is you build a hatchery there so you can start getting some more minerals going. But also if they manage to expand somewhere else completely different, then basically building your hatchery there will allow you to basically keep that spot contested and occupied. So it's harder for them to get back into the game basically if they've somehow managed to build an expansion right away. But
Right.
luckily they didn't, so as soon as this thing burns down, that's going to be it. And there you go. That is the Zerg Rush in a nutshell. If you didn't know about it before, now you do, and maybe someday you'll experience it or be in the receiving end of it.
Ah, okay, we're playing as the Protoss now.
Yes, the Protoss are in fact my favourite race between the 3. I don't know if it's how they look or just the units they have are just way cooler. But I think the main one for me is their mineral gathering unit, which are these probes here. They're just so darn cute. And they make little beepy noises as well. It's just like... You just can't not love them. I mean, the drones are, I guess, cute in their own way if you like disgusting things with pincers, like hacking away at minerals. But the probes have a little appeal. They're just tiny little machines doing a good job trying to fund the army.
Now, I've never heard of a Protoss rush, so what exactly are we showing off here?
This is pretty much, for the most part, a standard game, although the Protoss aren't without their own rush strategies. The nice thing about Starcraft is that there's so many different strategies that the different races can pull off on their own, that you can have many different games just by trying out different strategies. So in this case, we're going to exercise a Protoss rush strategy, But this time we got 2 opponents to deal with, so obviously this is only going to really work on 1. And the way this works is that we send a probe over to the enemy base. Now the problem is with the Protoss is that they cannot build anywhere where there isn't a pylon, except obviously a pylon, which they can build anywhere. So to begin with, we build a pylon, which will allow us to build other structures there eventually.
Okay.
And what we're going to do is we're going to start putting down immobile defense towers there. And what's going to happen with that is that these towers will be able to take care of their mineral line and also be able to defend themselves as well, obviously, just by being towers. They're generally quite hard to take care of without either multiple units or a specific unit. So that's going to be our method of taking out this guy here, although of course we still have another Zerg opponent to take care of later on. And we're going to do that the old-fashioned way with some good old elbow grease and brute force. But you know, if we can take one out of the picture right away, that's generally a good idea. It's similar to what you do in a Command and Conquer game, where if you're facing up against multiple AI opponents, what you generally want to try and do is maybe build an engineer early on and try and capture their construction yard. It's kind of similar to that, just to maybe get a neighbor out of the picture right away so that you can then begin focusing on how the bigger picture is going to look. But of course, the amount of strategies you can do in StarCraft isn't necessarily limited to the early game. Like, your mid and late game will usually depend on your unit compositions. And unit composition is something that you have to be very mindful of here especially, because unlike some other strategy games, and very much like Warcraft as well, you can only control so many units at a time, usually about 12. So you've got to be careful about how you build your units, because sure, you could just build the cheapest unit you can and just build hundreds and hundreds of them, but actually getting to ordering them all around is going to be incredibly difficult, because of course you can only order 12 at a time.
Yeah.
So getting the most efficiency out of your army, whilst at the same time keeping it fairly compact, is generally what you're looking for. So whether that's a case of you build like a front line of regular dudes, and then maybe your back line has some ranged units or maybe some ships or something like that. That's generally how you go about things. So you'll send your front line in first, and then you'll have your back line come in afterwards and start mopping up whilst they're kind of tangoed up with your frontline melee.
This seems cruel somehow. They're only trying to harvest minerals.
Well, they did send a few Marines, but of course one Marine isn't going to cut it against a cannon. They're pretty damn strong, and their range is deceptively large too. So you've got to be really careful if you're on the receiving end of one of those. But then again, building 1 or 2 towers of your own within your own base is generally considered a good idea. Especially if you're dealing with other people who like to engage in their own rush strategies. The one way that you can actually counter this, and this is something the AI for some reason doesn't do. To this day I don't really understand why. Maybe it's just they didn't really think about it at the time. But what most people would do is they'd select all of their SCVs, or whatever worker unit they happen to be using, and just pile in on whatever drones or what have you is trying to build shit near your base and just take it out before it can be finished building.
Okay.
Unfortunately, the AI doesn't really do that. I think it may be only on 1 or 2 occasions, but I think I lucked out somehow. Like, maybe I put a building just an inch too close to them and they took great offense to that or something, I don't know. But it's a bit weird. I think they did actually fix that in StarCraft 2, though. So, you know, there was some evolution and development in the AI there, luckily. So here we go. We've pretty much taken care of them, so this is fast-forwarding a bit, because obviously you don't want to be watching me build units for 5 minutes. You want to get straight into the action.
Well, I'm struggling to come up with stuff to say as is, mate. I'm sorry, I'm not an RTS guy. I'm just here to make affirming statements to Volk's comments.
It's all good, it's all good. You can riff like the best of them, so, you know, I value that above most things in life. So here we go. We're going to send in our army to say hello to the Zerg force now, because, well, they've been left alive for too long, and I take great offense to that.
What are those things? They look really goofy.
What, the Dragoons?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're basically your stereotypical generic ranged unit of the Protoss. They are actually the fallen Protoss that have been put into a robotic shell so that they can continue to fight in death. Think of it as similar to a Space Marine dreadnought. So, basically, a dude dies, you put his corpse in a shell, or you inject his spirit into a machine, and they continue fighting like the bloodthirsty maniacs they are.
Oh, nice.
So, the Zerg have actually got some really, really nice units, but some very annoying ones, like this lurker here. If it burrows underground, it renders itself invisible and will basically attack all your structures. So in order to actually take care of that, you either need a structure that can uncover invisible units, or you need to build a specific unit built for spotting those sorts of things. So in my case, it would be an observer, which just kind of hovers around the battlefield finding all the invisible shit, basically. But there's just such a huge variety of units that are in this game, and each faction is very unique and have their own sort of specific things that they can be good at, and some things that they're perhaps not as good at. But they have the same basic skills, but they can kind of branch out and have like their own individual strength as well. So with the Zerg, it may just be a case of, hey, we can build loads and loads of tiny units, or I could build like 3 or 4 of these massive things that will take you an age to kill. And in the case of the Protoss, you've got mobile units that can be made to become even more mobile by the use of dropships. So there's this interesting unit in the game called, I can't remember exactly what it was called, it might be a scarab or something like that, but it's essentially like this giant bagworm that can shoot highly potent explosives. And on its own, it's not very mobile, it literally like crawls around the battlefield like a slug normally. But if you arm that thing in a dropship and just drop it off everywhere, you can have it shoot a few mines, pick it up, and then run over to somewhere else and lay more mines, and then just basically plonking down here, there, and everywhere, and just lay havoc to the entire battlefield. It is incredibly amusing, but you need to have pretty quick fingers to do so, because obviously if you're too slow on the ball picking up that thing again, somebody's just going to come over and kill it. So here we go. They've still got some structures left over, so we're going to take care of those in the process, just so we can get our player elimination here.
Will we be seeing you take control of the Terrans at any point in this episode, right?
Not today, because honestly I'm not very fond of the Terrans.
Yeah, we're shit, really.
No, it's not so much that, I just didn't find them all that interesting in all honesty, compared to the Protoss and the Zerg. But the Terrans are pretty solid in their own right as well, and obviously they make for interesting story characters as well, and the story in this game is honestly phenomenal. I don't want to get too much into it because spoilers and such, but this is a game you very much want to try and get into the story mode of, because there's a lot to say and there's a lot to see. Luckily, also, this game is getting a HD remake of sorts as well, so it's going to get a new lick of paint and all of the graphics will be upscaled and redefined and all that sort of thing. But the best part is the game itself, the original game, is going to be made free.
Ooh.
So basically you have no excuse not to play this if you're anyway interested in RTS. They're giving it to you for free.
Could you go lower than 3? I'm still on the fence about this.
I know I could take it for free, but I'd be very much more inclined if you also paid me a stipend. I don't know, I think that might be asking a bit too much, especially with the kind of quality game you're actually getting here.
I want to be an RTS nut so much, but my brain just doesn't move quick enough. There's no consistency in my actions, and it fucking sucks. I hate it.
Yeah, this is a game where you don't necessarily need quick actions, but quick actions will get you hella far. I mean, obviously, you can play at your own pace, but if someone's faster than you, they're obviously able to get more out of their time than you are, and before you know it, they've like swarmed you just because they can get to their hotkeys quicker, or they've memorized like all the things off by heart and what have you. So we're just going to try and clear out the main Zerg base, but unfortunately, in the time it's taken us to get to them, they've expanded pretty much all over the map, so the remainder of our time is going to be taking out this remaining base and also finding their expansions. One thing the Zerg tends to do well is rapid expansion, so
yeah.
That doesn't surprise me in the least.
Well, that's bugs for you, mate.
Yeah. You just squish one and then more keep coming. But yeah, obviously there's a sequel to this out as well, which obviously goes by the name of Starcraft 2.
You don't say.
But I'm not sure, it didn't seem nearly as well received as this one did, even though people have wanted a StarCraft 2 for a long time. I guess as much as a sequel to a well-received game would be equally well-received, it just doesn't beat the original for a lot of people. But you know, StarCraft 2 is very good. They split the story mode into 3 separate expansions, as it were. So the main game comes with the Terrans, And then the Zerg expansion kind of follows on from that, and then the Protoss story follows on even further from that.
Yeah.
And kind of closes out the story as far as we're aware. Which is great, because in Brood War, the story was kind of left open-ended, without getting too much into it, and StarCraft 2 does a good job of picking back up on it again, albeit like several years later. If you go through StarCraft story and find yourself wanting more, then picking up StarCraft 2 would honestly be a pretty good idea.
I got a question for you, mate. It might be a tad personal. It depends on how much you were into this thing at the time. You ready?
Yep, sure. Go for it.
Do you remember StarCraft Ghost?
Yes, I do. StarCraft Ghost was a game that was announced in 2001, I believe, and then it never saw the light of day.
Well, it was 2002, but otherwise you are correct. It was going to be developed by Nihilistic Software for the GameCube, Xbox, and PS2. And that's about it. It was going to be a military science fiction stealth action video game, and no wonder it got cancelled. Like, Jesus, do you not know your audience?
I think it's kind of in the same way. I think they were trying to go for like their own answer to Command and Conquer Renegades. It just didn't work out for whatever reason. Maybe the funding wasn't there, maybe it was the wrong kind of game at the wrong time, or maybe people just wanted more of the same rather than trying to do something different. Because, you know, with a game as successful as this, people just want more of the same at that point. But yeah, I think they did end up kind of making StarCraft Ghost, although it was under a different name. It had something to do with StarCraft 2, but they had the character who was originally going to feature in Ghost, who is called Nova, and they kind of follow on a story from there. So it's not exactly like StarCraft Ghost, but I think what they did was they took the story that they intended to use it for, maybe revamped it a little bit with the current lore that they had, and then made it so that they at least had something, I guess, as opposed to just leaving it there and forgetting it ever existed.
You may be thinking of a novelization.
No, there was novels of it as well, but I'm pretty sure there was like an extra thing in StarCraft 2 or something like that.
We'll see, mate.
I don't remember the specifics, but that's pretty much how I remember it. But yes, StarCraft. It is a game that very much goes down in history as one of the best. And it's going to be, unless it's for free now, it's going to be for free very soon. So if you're in any way interested in RTS, definitely check it out.
Stop taunting me.
Play the story especially, because it is a pretty damn amazing story. Not at all what you'd expect from an RTS game, especially if you're used to the kind of cheese they throw at you with the likes of Command and Conquer.
Yeah.
But there we go, that should just about do it. So, that was StarCraft, so tune in for the next episode where we will be covering Hotline Miami.
Sorry I didn't have much to say in this one, guys, but that's NTom for you. He doesn't know shit about RTSs. We'll see you next time for another episode of NTom and Volk's Spot of PC. V for victory!